Are you wasting your time and money on inefficiencies in the business? Are sales down and lead conversion rates are low? Are you having problems building or maintaining inventory levels? What does it really take to win in the automotive industry?
Get the cars that make sense for your store rather than just wishing at an auction. So it gives you that better control.
With over 25 years of experience, Daryl the Wolf Steed isn't just another industry voice. He's the guy who's out there solving real problems for dealers just like you.
They'll even say in the Pacific Northwest where you're at that it's a tougher market. It's, it's tougher to find cars. The market's a little bit softer. And in the midst of all this, your turn doubled and your profit's up 75%.
Yes.
The truth hurts only when it should. Are you ready to hear the truths? Daryl is here to unpack the hard truths and the proven strategies that will take your dealership from struggling to soaring. And he is taking it all in the streets, with real talk, open dialogue, unfiltered conversations. This is the podcast series, Street Smarts, powered by Smart Wolf Consulting.
Welcome back to another episode of Street Smarts, powered by Smart Wolf Consulting. And today we're live for a little bit of an update and conversation. If anyone wants to jump in here, this is an impromptu live, but I thought, you know what? Been having a lot of conversations this week, and it's revolved around quite a few different topics, but three came to mind that a lot of people have been asking questions. So I said, you know what? Let's jump on here and have a little conversation, some insights, see if anyone jumps in the chat, see if we can't get some things answered. And in the worst case scenario, people can watch this later and start a conversation. But we have been seeing reports, and mind you, with Smart Wolf Consulting, we have been talking about that compression was going to be at an all-time high, and that 2025 was going to be one of, if not the most difficult year we've seen when it comes to profitability since June of last year, and that you needed to prepare for that and you needed to adapt to it then. And a lot of people are still waiting and seeing and hoping, and no real plan, no real action. Well, now a lot of conversations are going on because some people had a good February, but most people didn't. And the tax relief just wasn't what people expected. So I thought to myself, guys, it's time to pivot and adapt, but not just because of the market. Let's think about the three key indicators that I highlighted in here. Is the generations have changed. When you think about that, who's your guys' selling body now? Yes, we still have baby boomers, and we have Gen X, and we have millennials, but now we have Gen A coming into that market, the early adoption of Gen A. And when you think about the late millennials and Generation A, you have to start thinking about it. Gen Z, is you have to think about, okay, one, how do they converse? How do they look at life? How are they motivated? How do they engage with people? And are you in that area? Because when you think about it, if you believe, and I'm sure if, the really good operators have figured this out, and maybe you're even studying and marketing it, is if you believe baby boomers is the large part of your population or your sales adaptation, you're wrong, right? Gen X is probably a piece of it, but millennials and Gen Z are going to be a big piece of your guys' selling body. And are you really training and developing and engaging with people where those generations are at? And we wonder when we talk about that talent has kind of dried up. We don't have the same talent or the same work habits or same drive that we had with, let's say, the Gen X and early adopted millennials, and then even the baby boomers before that. Is if we know that's true, well, has it dried up and has it come to a screeching halt, or is it more of a problem that we haven't adapted to how to engage with the newer generations? So is talent really a problem, or is leadership the problem? I'm going to side on the caution, or side on the thing that leadership needs to adapt, and they need to get better, whether it be webinar training, certification training, going to training, and learning how to communicate, manage, and coach the newer generations. And then more importantly, how to communicate with the selling body that falls within that type of apparatus. There was a study that just came out a couple weeks ago that was talking about Gen Xers that have now moved into where they actually have adapted to communicating and living in those social platforms like millennials because they've been around it enough now. That's where they live. So when you think about that, what have you done to ensure that you're in the area and that you communicate in that type of prism like people communicate every day on their mobile devices or social media? Are you one of those dealers that constantly just do everything out of their CRM and send emails and hit a box to clear actions and then wonder why you're not getting where you need to be? Do you have any other strategies have you done any other strategies, made attempts at any other strategies that could possibly be more effective for your current market or your dynamic social scale or economic scale in your area? Well, if you haven't, stop being surprised by the fact that you're not getting ahead. And now let's look at the market, right? Step 2 that I wanted to discuss, right? To just give some highlights, because if people aren't going to jump in, we're just going to give a kind of a market strategy highlight, is the market. The market's ever changing. If new cars is your way to profitability and you're successful at doing that, I'm going to be the first one to say you're the unicorn in the environment and don't change what you're doing, because whatever you're doing can't seem to be replicated very much. However, for most cases, new cars is not a profit strategy, nor has it ever been. It's been a way to generate service operations traffic, which is your fixed operations, and then to generate market share so that you can then bring that back in and then have a strong used car strategy. So what I'm about to go over isn't something that's new or innovative. It's really to let people know that if we know the market's tougher than it ever has been when it comes to new cars, and there's the possibility of threat of tariffs, and I personally think the tariff is a great idea in the way of sustaining the used car market, because that's going to drive up values because new cars become unaffordable, or manufacturers have to decide to stop making billions of dollars of profit and only make hundreds of millions of dollars of profit, and lower the cost of ownership. So if we know the used car market's getting tougher and compression's higher than it's ever been before when it comes to what you have to pay to what it's actually transacting at because of affordability, why are you still measuring things the same way? Why are you still trying to run a store with front-end profit strategies as your main component? Let's ask yourself that question. Why aren't you looking at how you get more opportunities at back-end profit, more opportunities into your fixed operations, and getting your market share or grabbing up market share for long-term sustainability, so that you have that growth of understanding, if I'm going to have compression now, what does it look like 3 years from now? Am I building my market base up to then recover lost profits or lost opportunities that are now when the market eventually breaks free and gets back to normal? Or are we on the hope plan, the wish plan, wish, right? I wish, I hope, right? Which is basically a wish without a plan. That's what hope is. And so you have to ask yourself, what are you doing with this market? Are you guys going after it? Are you hoping? Are you realigning yourself to having a different strategy to make sure that you're in that game? Now, some of you might be saying, well, listen, I can't go after the service business because my service is already maximized and I can't get to that point. Completely understand. And if you actually understand that, and we're not talking about your absorption, because absorption is different with every manufacturer. We're talking about you don't have the bandwidth to service your customers. Then you need to look at your scalability and growability. If you're not able to grow and service your customers, you already have a consumer experience problem, which means you're going to lose market share in the long term anyway. So maybe you do have to be one of the more high profit, low volume stores, but then you need to align where you're at with where you're at. So many times I have these conversations with stores and they're like, man, we want to grow, we want to buy cars, but they can't actually absorb the growth. They haven't actually come up with a plan that is self-sustainable for themselves. Either they don't have enough people, or they have too many people, or they have too high expenses, or they don't have enough expenses to do what they want to do. And most of the time it comes down to an alignment issue of where they're going, what they have to do, and what they would have to do to get there. So I want you to really challenge yourself when it comes to the market is, what are you doing? Do you even have a plan that aligns with what your store is going after? And do you have the ability to do it? Bandwidth, scalability, whatever it may be. Lastly is that strategy. What is your strategy? If it's used cars, you're like, new cars are going to drive our used car operations and service operations. Okay, does that strategy align with your pay plans? Does it align with your people? Does everyone in your store know that? And is everyone's store paddling the same exact way? Or do you have people that still have their own idea of like, yeah, I know they said we want to do this, but yeah, I'm not doing that. So I'm going to just keep doing what I'm doing. How many of you guys out there in the automotive world or in business in general, because you're seeing this cut across multiple different businesses, are afraid to get rid of people because you think they're doing a good job, but they're not actually bought into where you're going or what you want to do? Right. So you have to evaluate your strategy of like, listen, do you have the right people on the team? Are you moving the right places? Do your pay plans align with what you're telling people you want to do? And let me give you an example of that. So I was actually just talking to a store that signed up with Smart Wolf, and we were talking about their pay plans, and like, yeah, we pay them every time they buy a car. And I was like, great. So if they don't buy a car, let's say last month, 28 days in the month, it's the 25th, they're at 5 cars, but they're not making any money. And so now they have some appointments and everything else. What do you think happens? Like, you can't possibly be this ignorant to what's happening, right? Is they don't buy the cars because they're like, you know what? I've got a couple of appointments, but I'm going to wait till next month because I've already made no money this month. So I'm going to start my next month out there. So they stop working for you. Now you have to ask yourself, is that the person you hired, or is that the way that they're working their pay plan? We all know in this industry and in most industries that people are smart enough to understand and work a pay plan. So if that's the case, what are you doing with your strategy to align with where you're going? Does your pay plan align based on the actions in the effectiveness of where you're going, or does it just align to the results? Because if someone doesn't start getting the results based on the expectation you have that they may not be at the same level to exceed those or get those expectations yet, then you're actually shooting yourself in the foot because you have not done the things that drive the traffic to your store. So to give you kind of an iteration to that is, think about it as if I drove 100 appointments to your store and you only bought 3 cars. Whose problem is that? The person that got the appointments to the store or the store itself? I'd argue it's the store itself. I got you 100 people to your store. If you couldn't figure out how to make deals with these people, you have an in-store problem. So that's what I'm talking about when you're talking about strategy. What is your strategy? Is it getting people to your store? Because you can't sell them a car unless you get them there. So it should never be, and it's very lazy and really happenstance for any dealer to say, well, we want to sell more cars. That's not only obvious, it really makes it look like you don't actually have a strategy, process, or a plan. Of course you want to sell more cars, but inevitably in order to sell more cars, you need to get engaged with more people. So engagement means they come to your store, they engage with you online, they engage with you conversation virtually. But if that's the goal, is that we need to have more engagements, more conversations, shouldn't that be the body of a pay plan? Not the actual result, but the actions to it. Because the results happen when you do all the other things the right way, when you do all the other things effectively. I don't magically buy or sell 10, 15, 20 cars just because. I have to do all the other things to get there. So I really challenge everybody with their strategy of understanding, what exactly are you guys trying to do? What exactly are we trying to do, right? And what are you doing to pivot? What are you doing to open up your methodologies and your understanding? Is it selling different types of vehicles? Is it selling lower price point vehicles? Is it selling higher price point vehicles? I had another conversation with some really effective people over at Lot Walk or at Lot Pop with the Lot Walk product. And we were really having a real good conversation about retail merchandising. I deal with the acquisition side, and guys, listen, I'm really good at what I do. And when people follow the strategies I give them, they have a lot of success. But oddly enough, I get into these conversations all the time. And the people I'm talking to will say, well, we want to buy 100 cars. Well, then they don't realize in order to buy 100 cars, 200 cars, 50 cars, it doesn't really much matter. You have to have a really good retail strategy, because if we just buy cars, but we don't know what we're going to do as an exit in the retail market, then you just acquire inventory and you take on age. So that might mean you have to spend a little bit more money in merchandising or advertising. It might mean that you have to have a much more finite process for recon. It might mean you need a much more finite process in the merchandising side of it. But you can't just arbitrarily say that I want to do one thing without understanding the ripples it has across all the store or all the networks in the store. So I wanted to just sit there and kind of do a quick little drop in and really like get a thought starter going of, what are you doing to pivot and adapt? And 3 places you could pivot and adapt is, what do you do to pivot and adapt in dealing with the new generations of the millennials and Gen Zs, and now how Gen X is adapting to more how millennials communicate because of all the social media platforms and texting communication and the buy it now type of options, to where they don't have really any time or They need that instant gratification. So what are you doing to not only make those changes in your store to be where people are at, but more importantly, what are you doing to train your management and your leadership, and then training your salespeople and acquisition people? And then more importantly, who's making sure to follow through that that's actually being done on a daily basis so you have consistency? Second, and when it comes to the market, what are you doing to attack the market and to ensure that you get all you can out of the market? Are you just hoping and praying that something's going to happen without any plan or action? Okay, that's a wish. Okay, that's not like things don't happen just because you hope for them. Okay, you actually have to put action behind it. You've got to put in the diligence. You got to put in the actions. You've got to put in the discipline and be consistent to where you're going. So ask yourself, what are you doing? And does everyone in your store understand what that is that you're going to after in the market? And then your strategy. Okay, what is your strategy? Are you maintaining? Are you growing? Are you shifting? Is it gross? Is it volume? Is it operations? What is it? And again, does everyone in your store know that? So I want you to really think about those three areas, and you can put in questions, you can put in comments, and really just a thought starter. If you're not doing anything, please, guys, jump in, give me a call, reach out to me. This is what I specialize in. But even if you don't want help, start somewhere, because this is going to be a tough year. Next year will be a little bit easier, but not much easier, right? We have a couple years where we're going to have to be really good and learn how to do what we do again. And there's nothing wrong with asking for help. And I leave you with this, with a little story to kind of show you guys exactly what we're talking about in a real world environment. So my stepdad actually got in a car accident, and my stepdad's 73 years old. And let's get real. At 73 years old, I don't think that he's going to listen to anything I tell him to do, because he's kind of just stuck in what he does. However, he got in a pretty big accident, right? Car's totaled, but he's okay. And so we said, hey, we're going to fly out there and help you. And he's like, I don't need any help. I'm going to get it taken care of. And it took a little bit of time. But what was interesting is he said, you know what? Hey, we told him we wanted to help him with a couple things. And so I had to change how I communicated with him. I couldn't tell him, hey, we're going to come out there and do it for you, and we wanted to be there for you, because that made him feel inferior, even though that's not what we were going for, but the communication wasn't working. So I had to change my strategy. I had to pivot. I had to adapt and realize I'm talking to a different type of generation. And so then when we communicated with him, and then I sent him some messages, sent him a video, sent him some things just to let him know. So sincerity, empathy's in there. He then said, yeah, I really appreciate it. And so we're going to help him get, someone to come by his house and help him with some chores and do some stuff like that. And then he was more than happy to accept help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help to get stuff that maybe you're either not great at, you're unfamiliar with, or that you just can't get done alone, because everyone's better with somebody else. Okay, trying to be an army of one and taking on a mission without asking for help. Okay, I'm not telling you won't be successful. I'm just telling you that you can find success faster, typically more success or more effective success when you ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help, but really think about it and think about how you're going to pivot and adapt in the next 30 days to ensure that not only yourself, if you're a dealer principal or a GM, but the staff underneath you that depends on you to make these decisions and lead by example of what you're going to do to pivot and adapt and communicate, so that you make sure that your staff, their financial security is set and put in a better position to make it through the next year, year and a half, rather than guessing, hoping, and wishing. I hope you guys got a lot of content here. I hope this ends up generating some either questions, insights, comments. We want to see them all, because at the end of the day, guys, we're here to help everybody be better, okay, get better, be more profitable. And again, taking everything from the streets and bringing it back into your store in way of profitability, experience, and customers. Talk to you soon. Another episode of Street Smarts, powered by Smart Wolf Consulting. I'm Daryl Steed, and I appreciate all of you guys.